other here and there you could find. The Chicago Tribune actually covered it in this case, but there was very little coverage. And you can see why. The conclusions of the Commission were just not useful for ideological warfare. Why? Well, first of all, the Commission denounced the United States. It singled out the United States and the United States alone for condemnation because the United States had undermined the indispensable element for peace in the region by continuing its support for the irregular forces attacking Nicaragua from Honduras, and in fact from Costa Rica. And that's the central condemnation in the Accords. Well, plainly that's useless. Now, the Commission went on to say that they couldn't provide detailed comments on the particular countries of the region, and the reason for that was that 3 countries objected: El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. The 3 U.S. terror states would not permit a description. You can figure out for yourselves what the description would have been, but the U.S. wouldn't allow it through its clients. It blocked any description of the... however, they did have a press conference in Costa Rica, and there the delegates discussed, the Latin American representatives spoke openly at the press conferences of what they called, they said that they were shocked by the attitude of patent fear in the faces of opposition people and trade unionists in El Salvador and Guatemala, the 2 U.S. terror states. Well, plainly there's no point in reporting that. The Commission also praised Nicaragua for what they called concrete steps towards democratization despite the ongoing U.S. aggression. Well, that's plainly useless. In fact, none of this is useful for ideological warfare, so therefore it didn't happen. And the reporting is virtually zero in the New York Times, which is the most important newspaper. Worse than zero, 1 sentence which was a lie. The Commission plainly had to be disbanded, and the U.S. simply insisted that it be disbanded. The main U.S. client in the region, Jose Napoleon Duarte, who is a Democrat by definition because he follows U.S. orders, is also one of the worst murderers in the history of Latin America, and he's reviled and detested throughout Latin America for this region, but here he's very highly praised. He said with some insight, I think, that it wasn't really necessary to have an international commission of verification because he said the press would suffice for verification. That's quite right. That expresses a real insight into the workings of the press. Well, that took care of the International Verification Commission, so one element of the Accords, the basic element of the Accords, is gone, no more international supervision. Recognizing that the powerful make the rules and the weak just obey, Nicaraguan President Ortega then announced that Nicaragua would adhere to the conditions of the Accords alone.
A lot happened between the time of the speech by Noam Chomsky on the 3rd of March 1988 until about the 3rd of April when this videotape was made. March 1st, the Contras attacked a Nicaraguan village. March 2nd, the Republican Contra-Aid Plan was voted down. The next day, talks between the Nicaraguan government and Mosquito Indians began. On March 4th, the Democratic Contra-Aid Plan was voted down. 2 days later, there was an investigation of misuse of American funds in El Salvador. March 9th, negotiations between the Sandinistas and the Contras were canceled. The next day, the Contras released a captured American. The day after that, the Contras agreed with talks with Nicaragua. March 12th, Robert McFarland pled guilty to withholding Contra information from Congress. On the 15th, the Senate voted to force the president to inform them about covert operations. The next day, the Costa Rican president opposed Contra-Aid. Then the Big Four was indicted for conspiracy. The U.S. sent troops to the Honduran border, saying that Nicaragua had invaded, which Nicaragua denied. The next day, the troops did arrive from the United States, and the following day, Oliver North resigned. Duarte in El Salvador almost lost control of the National Assembly. The American troops moved within 15 miles of Nicaragua, and the Nicaraguan Contra talks reconvened. On the 24th, temporary truce between the Nicaraguans and the Contras was ironed out. All the heavies pleaded not guilty in the Contragate affair. March 28th, Nicaragua freed the prisoners under the ceasefire agreement, and the next day the negotiations began. On the 30th, Congress approved more Contra aid. April 1st, the ceasefire began in Nicaragua. The next day, the U.S. sent 1,300 troops to Panama. As of March 27th, 25,000 people have been killed in this American-sponsored Contra war against Nicaragua.